This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am the Doc, John McEnroe, joining me to review the week that was. 2 additional starts, one for Skubal, one for Casey Mize. I can't wait to get his breakdown regarding the roster. Look, even though there's more losing, there's only one guy I want to talk baseball with, and that's Vito Jerome Chirco. What's up, my friend?
Well, hey, thanks for saying that about me, okay? Because you're not always complimentary, okay, of me and what I do for the podcast network and for SNL Lions. We're busy, right? We're busy with the coverage of the Lions, but also with the Tigers. So we got the Tigers right now, and they had lost 9 in a row after starting 9-5. And actually, they're 2-11 now in their last 13, standing at 11-16 on Tuesday night going into their game against the Cubbies, the second of 3 against the Chicago Cubs. And you actually have Spencer Turnbull on the mound too Tuesday night going, looking to do something positive after Casey Mize on Monday night, his second career major league start, was just decent. And he only made it 3 1/3 innings. And he pitched less innings, with that being said, than his first outing against the White Sox. So he went from the mighty tough task of pitching against the White Sox to pitching against the Cubbies on Monday night at Comerica Park. And it wasn't always the most sharp, and especially with the command, John. Something that really stood out to me was that, and him not trusting his fastball nearly enough, throwing his complementary pitches, and more actually his go-to pitches, and they looked good at times. They did those pitches that he was able to locate some, change speeds and whatnot, and was able to reach 94 to 95 miles per hour with the fastball. But he was spotty with it and not consistent with just trusting himself with throwing that pitch as well. And it cost them at times. And you saw Javi Baez there for the Cubbies, probably have his coming out party for the season, hitting a couple of bombs. He was very solid. And just going through that Cubs order, the heart of it, and from top to bottom, Ian Happ and Schwarber, Rizzo, all these different dudes that are just tough tasks for anybody, let alone a rookie who is making a second major league start. So Mize, so far, shaky. And we hope for him to make improvements now moving forward the rest of the way this season, as I see him and Skubal still being parts of the Tigers' major league rotation as well as the season does progress.
What about Tarik Skubal? What do you think about his start, his second? It wasn't too bad. I thought it was impressive. I feel like, okay, I think the purpose now is to get them experience. Look, it would have been nice had both of them come up and just blown everybody away with their skills. I think everybody definitely is in love with Mize's splitter. They can't wait to see him take advantage of opposition and striking people out. I think it was great to see him with that many strikeouts in his first performance. And then you look at now the second time around, look, now is when these young cats got to get through the work, watch film, because guess what? When these major league hitters get to watch film and the specific breakdown, the coaching is so well done that they can almost hone in on what these guys are doing. And so I think young cats, it takes a while. And I think you saw online where, you know, the sarcastic cats like myself are like, whoa, what's going on with Casey Mize? What's going on with Skubal? They don't look like the young studs. And then all the, all of the veteran journalists are like, calm down. Justin Verlander struggled his first 7 starts. He didn't even look like Verlander for a while. So while being patient needs to be preached, I know that. Wouldn't you have liked to just seen a little bit more? I mean, 3 1/3 inning for Mize, a little bit more command. Wouldn't you have liked him to take a little bit more of an initiative to be out there a little bit more?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would have loved to have seen him go 5 innings. I mean, he only went 4 1/3 the last time out, his first career outing once again against the White Sox. And really, he was smooth sailing all the way through until that final inning he pitched, John. So he looked better, realistically speaking, as a whole, I think, in that first start that he did in his second outing on Monday night as well. So it didn't appear that he made progress from that first to second start either, which it's only a minor cause for concern because this guy, as you said, is young. He's going to go through those rookie stumbling blocks per se. And Justin Verlander did as well. You already noted that yourself too there, Doc. So he had the rough first two outings back in 2005. And Alan Trammell's last season as Tiger skipper, when the Tigers are still a middling ball club that finished well below 500, he made a couple of starts, including against the Indians on the 4th of July, in which he wasn't that effective. So Mize, now moving forward, the next start, well, yeah, you would like to see him throw 5 innings the next time out. And once again, I would have loved to have seen him do that on Monday night, yet it did not occur. So, and then Tarik Skubal, same kind of deal. You want to see him give the Tigers some innings now and pitch 5 innings. Why can't he do that, his next time around? And that's the hope, is that these guys build some kind of consistency. And I think in order to do that, the mental game is so huge, such a huge and essential component, too, with all of these major leaguers. And you can almost say, especially with these big league arms. And when they're first coming into the bigs and trying to get into the groove of things or swing of things, well, the mental part of the game, man, I think is almost the toughest part to adjust to. And it's when you're struggling on the mound and you've got guys on now. How do you adjust so your mechanics stay the same? You stay as effective with all your pitches. Well, Mize failed to do so on Monday night against the Cubbies, as his first inning was smooth sailing, man. He looked like a stud, like a bona fide, number 1 overall pick as he was back in 2018. And he struck out 2 out of 3. So got out the side and with ease, 1, 2, 3 there. But after the first inning, he threw a bunch of pitches. The pitch count really rapidly expanded, and it hurt him and did not allow him to go more than the 3 1/3 innings. So that was disappointing to see. But once again, you just hope for progress now out of these two young arms. And you've got to realize that these guys are more likely, unfortunately, guys, to struggle. They are than to succeed at this major league level through their first, I would say, 3 to 5 outings as big league arms.
Speaking of Skubal, 69 pitches in his second career Major League Baseball start. Tigers got the 7-4 victory over the Indians. We got to celebrate a little bit. After 20 consecutive losses, everybody was down. They just felt like, man, how could an organization lose that many consecutive games to another organization? And so the Tigers went to Cleveland and handled business. I think they went with more of a swagger, more of an attitude. And Skubal went in there and only gave up 1 run in 69 pitches, and the Tigers actually won the series. And I thought they played better. I thought they played a little bit more collective baseball and also got back to what they were doing that was successful earlier in the season, and that the big boppers were hitting some home runs. And it was nice to see, a couple long balls, a grand slam I think I saw, and there was an opportunity for the Detroit Tigers to put up some runs against the Indians. And at least, hey, if you're not as good as your opposition, it's at least something to speak on that when you face adversity, you go out there and you handle it. I thought it was a nice series win, getting some home runs, key hits, nice pitching, all the way around. I thought it was a nice weekend, at least, against the Indians.
Oh, yeah, they got to Pluco. They got to Carrasco. They had that one inning when they just took off against Carrasco, and unfortunately Carrasco just, succumbed to the Tigers, and Tigers hitting for power in that half inning against Carrasco over the weekend against the Tribe. But the Tigers did almost miraculously take 2 out of 3 against the Tribe after losing 20 in a row. And it was a long enough losing streak, obviously, one of the worst in Major League Baseball history. So the Tigers will never be able to erase that from their team's history. But you got to move forward now. It was about dang time, right, that these guys rebounded in such a fashion where they would win a series against the Cleveland Indians. Once again, against some Indian starters that haven't been their best starting arms this season. So Tigers went about their business, got it done, and as you said, took 2 out of 3. And that was a good sign from the Tigers, who, really weren't hitting too during the course of that 9-game losing streak. The bats really came out of their huge time slumber over the weekend, and that was a positive as well. And one bat to highlight that's really continued to hit all throughout this season is Jonathan Schoop, the Tigers' second baseman, who was an offseason acquisition. The Tigers, at Avila specifically, the Tigers' general manager, got him on the cheap over the offseason. And look at this guy and what he has done, almost on a day-to-day basis, too, in suiting up for the Tigers, Jonathan, at this point. You've seen this guy hit for power, hit for average to a certain extent, and really come up with the biggest hits for the Tigers up to this point in the campaign as well. So without his reliable bat right now, John, especially without Crone now, Miguel Cabrera continuing to struggle, where the Tigers would be at right now in the win column, man. I mean, they only have 11 wins as it is, and they're 5 games under 500 at 11-16 overall going into Tuesday night's matchup with the Cubs. So where the heck would they be if you think about erasing Schoop from the Tigers lineup? And he was back in the 2-hole, which I'd like to see on Monday. and he's hit cleanup since. Crow went down with the injury as well. But I really like him in that 2-hole, and I think he's like an optimal bat, at least for the Tigers and what they have to work with, hitting in that 2-hole too at this point. So I love what he has done. And maybe, just maybe, John, he's a trade candidate leading into this summer's Major League Baseball trade deadline.
Oh, okay. And so now, progressing, what are one or two storylines that have caught your attention or piqued, Vito's, mind in terms of the Detroit Tigers? What are you paying attention to at this point in time, midweek, as they face the Cubs at home at Comerica Park?
Well, how about Matthew Boyd kind of rebounding to his last outing? I mean, I like seeing that. I really did. I want to see what Turnbull does now here Tuesday night. I want to see what the Tigers do against John Lester, who has struggled lately, too, on Wednesday night in the last game of the series against the Cubs. And then what are they going to do during this 4-game series this upcoming weekend, Thursday through Sunday, against the Minnesota Twins, who stand at 20-10 currently going into Tuesday night? So there's a myriad of things right there. And how about Isaac? Is it Isaac? I'm going to go with Isaac based on Matt Shepard's pronunciation of his name, but Isaac Paredes and what he has done thus far in the Tigers uni. And he's done all right at the hot corner. He has struggled at times, and I did see him make an error, really an ugly error, too, the other night, where he didn't get in front of it, the ball there at third base, cleanly. But with this bat, I mean, he's got the capability of being a guy, I think, that hits for power and at a premium rate. So you need that. You definitely need that out of your youngsters right now. And I think Paredes is one of those guys, and maybe one of those few guys in the Tigers' positional prospects that can get to the majors like he has and hit right away and be an impact bat right away. And despite some struggles, he's good at K because he's always swinging. But if you look at his stats, too, this is the good thing about Paredes up to this point. His eye and his tendency to take pitches that are truly not strikes has been pretty darn high and respectable. So Paredes keeps that up, plus hits a bit more for average and drives in runners, man. Well, that's going to be, a premium and a go-to bat the rest of the way this season at least. And in future seasons, you would hope as well.
Absolutely. I definitely was nice to see him hit the grand slam. That was nice. I think it was a 10-5 victory Friday. It got things going. And look, what you look at in terms of the Tigers roster is you want to see some progression from some young cats. And I think that, early on you were pretty high on Jeimer Candelario. And I think he's kind of come back down to earth and is somebody that maybe you're not as high on anymore. I think you even said that potentially he might not be worth being on the roster anymore. Is that correct?
I did, but I like what he's doing right now. And he had that 0-for-17 stretch to start the season. But since then, I think he's been pretty unreliable. And especially in a Tigers order where there's not many reliable batters. So, no, up to this point, honestly, I'm pleased with them. Now, I'm not going to guarantee that he's a long-term Tigers solution or starter, let's say, at third base or first base, and especially with the presence of Paredes at third base. And if he had a good enough power hitter really to get it done consistently as a starting first baseman either. The verdict's still out, and honestly, I don't think he's that kind of a premium power hitter or run producer to be that guy that consistently starts for you at first base in a position in which you demand that power production, right? Or at the very least, a high amount of RBI production. So is he that high-level premium guy in the middle of the order that can carry the offense at times, too, from that first base position? I truly don't think that. But can he hit for average? Does he have a good eye? Can he play first and third respectively at least? I think he does, and that weighs a lot. That carries a lot of value nowadays. It's really about your defense, right, and you hitting for power. So at the very least, he has one of those two going for himself right now, and a little bit of pop. Plus, once again, respectability with having a good eye, getting on base, thus having a nice high OBP, a thing that I think he can maintain as well moving forward, and maybe he even develops a better eye and a better aptitude for having a high OBP too, moving forward in future seasons. So this is a guy who's still young enough to say, you don't give up on him. It's sad but true. I've reiterated this a few times now throughout the course of doing these Tigers Talk podcasts with you, John. But Alo Vila, his best trade right now, man. Trade haul that he's received since being the Tigers GM when he took over midseason in 2015, once Dave D was fired. It was this move in which he acquired Candelario and Paredes for his son, Alex Avila, and then relief pitcher Justin Wilson. Think about that trade now, man, in hindsight. It's clear-cut his best move that he's made as Tigers general manager when it comes to making the trade. So that's number one, once again, clear-cut. And you got to give it to Avila to seeing something in Candelario, to seeing something in Isaac Paredes, who wasn't a top-tier or one of the top prospects in the Cubs farm system at that point, because they had such a deep and rich farm system. So it made Paredes expendable for the Cubbies. Tigers since have benefited And once again, you want to see Candy and Paredes both continue to make progress at the dish. Because up to this point, in this season, at 11 and 16, as they stand right now as we're speaking here, John, those two dudes, these young individuals, Candelario and Paredes, you got to say it, almost sad but true. But these are two of their most reliable bats at this point.
What about Miguel? I mean, look, his salary definitely makes it so that we got to talk about it, but he's been highly underproductive. He's not, hitting the home runs, and that was obviously to be expected, but how frustrated are you that Miguel Cabrera just, for whatever reason, age has caught up with him. He's not able to connect. I thought that, and to be honest, I thought that he wasn't going to drop off that much, but holy smokes, I mean, you're almost starting to clap when he gets on base. I thought that he would be more of a contact hitter later in his career, maybe not the home run, the big bat per se. I thought that he would at least be able to make contact on a little bit more consistent basis. His numbers are pretty bad at the moment.
Well, come on, man, that's bad. I mean, direly or astronomically bad. I mean, he's sitting below the Mendoza line for a guy that's a future Hall of Famer. So for what he's become, from what he was to what he has become now, John, it's laughable, and it's sad for Mickey at this point in the latter part of his major league career that he's succumbed to this version of himself, hugely an old shell of himself. A guy, once again, hitting below the Mendoza line, barely can catch up to fastballs on a regular basis, is frequently tardy on those kind of pitches, even ones that maybe only hit 94 on the radar gun. He had his power zapped from him almost completely as well, unless maybe a hanging pitch that's slow, comes in slow, a hanging curveball, something like that, or an off-speed pitch, a changeup that ends up high in the zone that he then is able to barrel and hit out of the ballpark. But outside of that, when it comes to the power production too, man, I mean, his power has been zapped almost completely. So, and when is he going to hit his next home run at this point? And just be a consistent run producer from that free spot in the Tigers' order. I have my doubts hugely at this point. I think a lot of people do as well regarding Miguel Cabrera when it comes to him being a solid number 3 hitter consistently game to game right now for the Tigers. Because realistically speaking, once again, he is a shell completely of his old self. Meaning he's not the guy that should be hitting number 3 in the Tigers order on a consistent basis. He's a guy who, if he continues to struggle like this up to this degree, John, you got to start bringing up the point of, hey, do we move him down in the order or sit him entirely, man, before the season is over? Because I think at the very least, you got to start considering moderately, John, the prospect of him being moved down in the order to 5th, to 6th. And I don't think they would have him drop any lower in the lineup. But honestly, based on his numbers and what he's capable of doing right now, what is he really in a major league lineup? Might not even have a spot. And if anything, he's a 7th hitter, the 8th hitter, the last hitter. Let's say a 7th or 8th, though. So that's really all you got now out of Miguel Cabrera. That is what he has become, what he has to come to at the latter part that he is in his major league career. So nowhere near the hitter and premium slugger that he used to be when he was a Hall of Fame guy, in his heyday, a guy that will be in training Cooperstown one day and as a Tiger, luckily as well, for all the success that he's had in the Tigers at uni since joining the franchise in 2008. But you look at, once again, what he is right now, yeah, he's not the guy that should be hitting 3rd. And how long do the Tigers stick it out with him in that spot in the everyday lineup?
Yeah, disappointing, man. And guess what? How many more years we got left? 3. 3 more years. You can't get rid of him. That's the way it is, and it's highly unfortunate that this is the way it's come. But this is, when you give a contract to an aging player, early on you're going to reap the rewards, but later on in the contract you're going to feel the hurting, and that's what the Tigers are doing. It's like a handcuff. A team that's rebuilding is paying an aging superstar $30 million to not hit. Oh boy, it's just one.
Not a good situation there.
Yeah,
not pretty, man. When you're handcuffed to that, like you said, definition of being handcuffed, $30 million a year until 2023. I mean, are we gonna just let this guy go by the wayside now? Will he decide to retire because he's struggling and he finally realizes, man, I can't turn this around as well, and maybe he does that at the end of next season? Because I think this year you play it out with him. He's going to be in the everyday lineup until the remainder of the season, until maybe the last 5 games, let's say, when maybe Gardenhire, just to be nice to him, will sit him down for the last 5 games. But then next year, he's going to be the starting DH to start the year. And how long does that last if he struggles at this kind of a level once again next year? I think at some point, John, you got to once again consider at the very least, moving him down in the order, which I think is more likely to come with the Tigers next year.
Okay, so you see a ball club that's kind of like right there, kind of in the middle. Obviously, I don't think they're going to make that playoff push. I don't think, though, that they're going to make the decision to sell. I don't know. Part of me recognizes that it's 6 days away and it's going to be, August 31st, the trade deadline. I don't think they're going to move on from Jonathan Scope. Do you? You think that they're going to actually break apart more of the roster and sell, or you say just let's go with what we got and finish out the season? I don't see a massive fire sale, but what do you think, Vito? Do you think that it would behoove the Tigers to consider? Because, look, it's pretty much straightforward. You don't have enough starting pitching that would warrant moving forward in 2020.
Resign Scope. How about not trade him, but decide to keep him? Retain him for next year. Maybe you want to try to win next year, at least be more competitive than they have been. I mean, and I know they started off 9-5 in their first 14 games. Sure. You say whatever you want about them being competitive and relevant at that point. But obviously, they have fallen mightily on some hard times. Losers of 11 of the last 13, had the 9-game losing streak. Now they're looking all right. But are they going to be a playoff team? No, not this year. More than likely not next year. But why don't you look into re-signing Scope once again? Instead of trading Jonathan Scope for stuff in a package that probably wouldn't be appeasing to a lot of us as fans and pundits like John. Keep him then for next year. Make him your starting second baseman in 2021 as well. Daniel Norris, a left-hander, he was just labeled as a top 5 trade piece among relievers by Buster Olney at ESPN on Sunday Night Baseball this past Sunday. How about you keep the youngster instead of dealing them? I think he is as young as I am. We're both below 30, and we're both, striking young gentlemen still. They have a lot of years left of being in our respective primes in more ways than one. But anyways, Norris is a guy that's kind of become a sexy piece out of the Tigers' head in the middle innings, pitching 2-3 innings at a time because of his starting pitching experience. So he might never be a starting arm in the Tigers' rotation again, or any major league club's rotation. But can he be a successful guy out of the pen in the middle innings? I think at the very least, Norris is capable of doing that, and he showcased that very much over the weekend against the Tribe and getting that series victory in Cleveland. So, this is something I think you see with Daniel Norris, a guy that you want to keep instead of dealing. And you can bring it up regarding Scope and some other guys that maybe have had some kind of success and maybe wouldn't a trade right now. You could trade Gregory Soto. You could trade Buck Farmer as well, who just came back from the injured list. But maybe you keep these younger dudes that are, they're vets, let's say, right? They have some years of experience under their respective belts. But I think when it comes to Norris and Scope, once again, specifically, probably their 2 biggest trade pieces outside of Farmer right now, I think you keep the 2 of them for sure, John. And just because the market out there for these guys, I don't think it's going to be hugely satisfactory if we were to deal them, to look at the haul that we would receive for either of those dudes or both of them. So I say instead of flipping them for something right now, we retain them. Tigers do for 2021.
Let's not overlook the return of Buck Farmer. I know you and I were impressed. Buck Farmer came back and handled his business. He kind of showcased some skills there in his pitching performances this week. It's okay. You realize, okay, Buck Farmer was gone and you saw the bullpen rotation as it was set. What do you think of how, I know that you're finally giving up on Jimenez, but he really hasn't blown too many saves. He's just not making his job that much easier. I want to get your sense of the bullpen and what you think the strengths are. And I know that you're going to say that Jimenez needs to be relieved of his duties. Soto probably needs to kind of move into that spot, but he's done an admirable job. Soto slipped a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but he's returned to form in his last performance. What do you think of the Tigers bullpen now at this point in the season?
See ya, Joe Jimenez. Sorry to bring it up again. Okay, it's a sore subject for a lot of us as Tigers fans here, and watching him consistently go out there and just get lit up, man. He gets lit like a Christmas tree, not from drinking alcohol, but by inducing hits, right, and home runs, allowing runs, and blowing games in which, he didn't blow a save, okay? Let's not say he's blown a ton of saves like you said, John, so we'll give him that much. But that means he hasn't pitched in those situations consistently where he was due for a save then, or would have been eligible to record a save. But he's still been shaky in numerous outings, and way too consistently to say he's a guy that's going to be a high leverage arm in your pen at the back end of the game in the future. I want him gone. I think a lot of Tigers fans want him gone, and at the very least, don't use him in high leverage situations with the game's on the line. And I know the Tigers did it on Sunday, but still he came in a game in the 9th inning, which has been his, and he's been pitching it as the Tigers closer up to now. and they've given him a lot of opportunities and a large rope to succeed here, to prove his worth. And Sunday is just the most recent example of it, when he went out there in the ninth and let up 3 runs, man, where they had to go to the pen after him and use another arm before the game ended. You know, they won that game 7-4, but they were up 7-1, man, 7-1 at one point, so they could have won the game even more easily, just sailed through that game and closed out that game in the ninth. And it didn't happen because of the struggles of Joe Jimenez. So I am still sour on him, clearly. Anyways, I digress about Joe Jimenez and want to bring up our man, Buck Farmer, who has become the best veteran Tigers reliever at the back end of games, at least, you know, specifically in spots where the Tigers have had a lead, have had to try to secure a 1-2 run lead, let's say, or are in a tied ball game when you need that high leverage arm. Farmer this year, because for an outing or two, has come through time and time again and looked good coming off of the IL as well. So I like Farmer. I like Stoto, who has pitched admirably lately, even though he's struggled since that hot start that he had to start the year, in which he was lights out and nobody could hit him in his great velocity with his fastball. So maybe he hasn't been as consistently productive, but Soto is still an arm you want to keep for future seasons. And, it brings me back to Buck Farmer, who I think is a trade candidate. He's a guy I could see the Tigers trading because I don't view him entirely as a part of their long-term future. So you trade him and not Soto. You trade him and not Daniel Norris, once again, another guy that's been affected out of the Tigers' pen in recent memory. So you deal a guy like Farmer right now, whose trade value is something. It's there. It's not probably extremely high, but he's a guy that, once again, over the course of the last year or so, has been the Tigers' most effective and consistently productive reliever at the back end of games. So once again, I think you really have to entertain the idea of dealing Farmer as we get closer and closer to that August 31 Major League Baseball trade deadline.
Make sure you follow Vito on Twitter at Vito Jerome. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Make sure if there's anything that you've agreed or disagreed with anything that we said on this week's episode, make sure you hit us up. We love Vito and myself. We love breaking down the Detroit Tigers. I know that, the wins are probably going to be harder to come by, but we're still watching. We're still invested. We still care about the hometown team. And yeah, they're going to struggle. There's going to be ups and downs, but we want to see progression. We want to see the young cats. And look, even though they may struggle, they may have their ups and downs, it's at least, in my opinion, brought in like a new energy. And it's good because, the roster as it was the last couple years really was, what we've called roster fatigue. We was tired talking about the same old players. Now there's an infusion of players that we can kind of look at and we can say, all right, let's see what's going on. And, literally the mildest controversy was basically Ron Gardenhire sitting Nico Goodrum for a game. He got all grumpy, came back, and started hitting. So that's where it's at. It's not too dramatic, not like, super exciting stuff going on, but it's the early developmental phase of a young team, and it's nice to see. Before we get out of here, any chance Torkelson, Green, any chance further arms show up here? Anybody else that might be on the radar that might be peeking up to the big league ball club?
Matt Manning, Alex Faedo. How would you like those two dudes being called up before the end of this season? I think Tigers fans are clamoring for Matt Manning at this point after seeing what Mize and Skubal have done up to this point, and after knowing that Manning was a top Tigers pitching prospect at one time. Before Mize came onto the scene, and Mize has been number one since, and really Skubal has taken the thunder, or the spotlight as well away from Matt Manning. But Manning has quality stuff, man, and how high quality of stuff does he truly have? Well, let's see it at the major league level, right? Let's see him get tested as well and kind of just be, just emerge onto the scene in a way in which he once again has to go through these tough major league lineups and really get baptized by fire, in so many words, right? And gets to prove his worth at this level and get that seasoning once again for future seasons too, just like with Skubal and Mize once again. And then there is once again Alex Faedo. Will Faedo be called up before the end of this campaign? I think he has a great shot as well of being called up before this season's end.
Thanks, everybody. We greatly appreciate the continued downloads. All you got to do, go to your favorite place. Your favorite podcast is located. Hit Detroit Sports Podcast, and then our daily content finds you. You don't got to do anything extra. We have broadcasts about the Michigan Wolverines, the Tigers, the Detroit Lions. We greatly appreciate your support, going strong since 2013. Appreciate it, everybody. I look forward to next week's edition of Tigers Talk. Talk soon, Vito.
Sayonara.